Hi, good evening, and I'd like to welcome you back to Poem Praise 2. We are going to get right back into the lies my teacher told me, and peace be upon you and blessings. Now let's go ahead and let's read. Take 8 goes like this. Now, at this time, Keller became a socialist. She was one of the most famous women on the planet. She soon became the most notorious. Her conversion to socialism caused a new storm of publicity, this time outraged. Newspapers that had extolled her courage and intelligence now emphasized her handicap. Columnists charged that she had no independent sensory input and was enthralled to those who fed her information. Typical was the editor of the Brooklyn Eagle, who wrote that Keller's mistakes spring out of the manifest limitations of her development. Keller recalled having met this editor. At that time, the compliments he paid me were so generous that I blush to remember them. But now that I have come out for socialism, he reminds me and the public that I am blind and deaf and especially liable to error. I must have shrunk in intelligence during the years since I met him. She wrote on. Oh, ridiculous, Brooklyn Eagle, socially blind and deaf. It defends an intolerable system, a system that is the cause of much of the physical blindness and deafness, which we are trying to prevent. Keller, who devoted much of her life to raising funds for the American Foundation for the Blind, never wavered in her belief that our society needed radical change. Having herself fought so hard to speak, she helped found the American Civil Liberties Union to fight for the free speech of others. She sent, not spent, she sent $100 to the NAACP with a letter of support that appeared in its magazine, The Crisis, a radical act for a white person from Alabama in the 1920s. She supported Eugene versus Debs, the socialist candidate, in each of his campaigns for the presidency. She composed essays on the women's movement, on politics, on economics. Near the end of her life, she wrote to Elizabeth Gurley Flynn, leader of the American Communist Party, who was then languishing in jail, a victim of the McCarthy era. Loving birthday greetings. Dear Elizabeth Flynn, may the sense of serving mankind bring strength and peace into your brave heart. One may not agree with Helen Keller's positions. Her praise of the USSR now seems naive, embarrassing, to some even treasonous. But she was a radical, a fact few Americans know, because our schooling and our mass media left it out. What we did not learn about Woodrow Wilson is even more remarkable. And here is a little picture. Can you see the picture? Now, I'll zoom it in, but you possibly cannot see the writing. So I'm going to read what's on his writing. And it says, President Wilson is deceiving the world when he appears as the prophet of democracy. President Wilson has opposed those who demand democracy for this country. He is responsible for the disfranchisement of millions of Americans. We in America know this. The world will find him out. And up under the picture it reads, among the progressive era reforms with which students often credit Woodrow Wilson is women's suffrage. Although women did receive the right to vote during Wilson's administration, the president was at first unsympathetic. He had suffragists arrested. His wife detested them. Public pressure, aroused by hunger strikes and other actions of the movement, convinced Wilson that to oppose women's suffrage was politically unwise. Textbooks typically fail to show that interrelationship between the hero and the people. By giving the credit to the hero, authors tell less than half of the story. When I asked my college students to tell me what they recall about President Wilson, they responded with enthusiasm. They say that Wilson led our country reluctantly into World War I, and after the war led the struggle nationally and internationally to establish the League of Nations. They associate Wilson with progressive causes like women's suffrage. A handful of students recall the Wilson administration palmer raids against left-wing unions. But my students seldom know or speak about two anti-democratic policies that Wilson carried out: his radical segregation of the federal government and his military interventions in foreign countries. Under Wilson, the United States intervened in Latin America more often than any other time in our history. We landed troops in Mexico in 1914, Haiti in 1915, the Dominican Republic in 1916, Mexico again in 1916, and 9 more times before the end of Wilson's presidency. Cuba in 1917, and Panama in 1918. Throughout his administration, Wilson manifested forces in Nicaragua, using them to determine Nicaragua's president and to force passage of a treaty preferential to the United States. In 1917, Woodrow Wilson took on a major power when he started sending secret monetary aid to the white side of the Russian Civil War. In the summer of 1918, he authorized a naval blockade of the Soviet Union and sent expeditionary forces to Murmansk, Archangel, and Vladivostok to help overthrow the Russian Revolution. With the blessing of Britain and France, and in a joint command with Japanese soldiers, American forces penetrated westward from Vladivostok, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but I'm trying, y'all, to Lake Baikal, supporting Czech and White Russia forces that has had declared an anti-communist government headquartered at Omsk after briefly maintaining front lines as far west as the Volga. The right, the white Russian forces disintegrated by the end of 1919, and our troops finally left Vladivostok on April 1st, 1920. Few Americans were not alive at the time know anything about our unknown war with Russia. To quote the title of Robert Maddox's book on the fiasco, none of the 12 American history books in my original sample ever mentioned it. 2 of the 6 new books do. Borstein and Kelly, for example, write, "The United States, hoping to keep stores of munitions from falling into German hands when Bolshevik Russian quit fighting, contributed some 5,000 troops to an Allied invasion of northern Russia at Archangel. Wilson likewise sent nearly 2,000 troops to Siberia as part of an Allied expedition. It is possible, although surely difficult, for an American student to infer from the passage that Wilson was intervening in Russia's Civil War. Russian textbooks, on the other hand, give the episode considerably coverage, according to Maddox. The immediate effect of the intervention was to prolong a bloody civil war, thereby costing thousands of additional lives and wreaking enormous destruction on an already battered society. And there were longer range implications. Bolshevik leaders had clear proof what the Western powers meant to destroy the Soviet government if given the chance. This aggression fueled the suspicions that motivated the Soviets during the Cold War, and until its breakup, the Soviet Union continued to claim damages for the invasion. Invaded, and they claiming damages. It's a claim. They got paid on the claim. I don't know, just added that little ad lib from just that line right there alone. But we're going to continue on. Wilson's invasions of Latin America are better known than his Russian adventure. Textbooks do cover some of them, and it is fascinating to watch textbook authors attempt to justify these episodes. Any accurate portrayal of the invasions could not possibly show Wilson or the United States in a favorable light. With hindsight, we know that Wilson's interventions in Cuba, the Dominican Republic, Haiti, and Nicaragua set the stage for the dictators Batista, Trujillo, the de Valers, and the Samoas, whose legacies still reverberate. Even in the 1910s, most of the invasions were unpopular in this country and provoked a torrent of criticism abroad. By the mid-1920s, Wilson's successor reversed his policies in Latin America. The author of his history textbooks know this. For a chapter or two after, Wilson, they lauded our good neighbor policy, the reunification of force in Latin America by President Coolidge and Hoover, which was extended by Franklin D. Roosevelt. Now that does complete this 8th take. Stay tuned to Poem Praise 2 for take 9 to read more of the lies my teacher told me. I want you to have a wonderful evening. Okay? Be blessed, and I'll talk with you soon here on Poem Praise 2. Later, y'all.